Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. Hey, it's me, Alex Greenwood. So glad that you're back with me for another episode here in Season 4 of the show. Have to just stop for a minute and tell everybody thank you. The response we're getting to this season's guest has been overwhelmingly positive. The downloads are through the roof. I mean, from the beginning with Mary McKenna, the veteran broadcaster, talking about her world and about radio and internet radio and satellite radio and just her thoughts on the Me Too movement's effect on radio and broadcasting, that has been a really fantastic download for a lot of people. And we went into the wonderful world of photographer Dwayne Halleck. If you haven't heard that one yet, it's a very special one. There's a twist to it that you won't see coming, and I hope you'll listen to that. Also had a great actor and producer, my old friend Scott Bartley, come on. That one has done extremely well. And by the way, it's September, and if you're in the area around the Oklahoma City Metro, they're doing Mamma Mia. You got to get those tickets, folks. Go support Scott. Support award-winning community theater. Also, I've been just really tickled with the response to Brian Hutton, who was our guest last week, talking about designing products for food service. I mean, you know, I call him the restaurant's invisible man for a reason, because he makes your dining experience that much better, and if he does his job right, as he says, you'll have no idea he was there, but the experience will be heightened by the things he designs to both show off your food, keep it warm better, plate it properly, all these things. So those have been some really good ones. There's more, too numerous to mention, but we hope you'll listen to it. And I would like to direct your attention to one other little housekeeping thing before we get to today's guest. mgopod.com. If you have not seen the new website, I decided that the website that kind of went with the hosting of the show was pretty bare bones and not very attractive, so I went and built a little website. It's at mgopod.com, and you go in there, you scroll down, and then there is a blog entry, for want of a better term. There's an entry for every episode for this season, and then I've gone back and I've started adding episodes from the previous 3 seasons as well. That should all be filled out within a couple of weeks or so, or definitely by Christmas. Let's just say that. I don't want to put too much pressure on myself to get all that done, but it's all there, and you get all the show notes there, all the clickables, all the stuff like that, so you can go to mgopod.com. I hope you'll check that out, and you can also subscribe there. You put that in there, and you get an email every time a new show comes out, which, how can you beat that? And the best part of all, it's free. I mean, come on now. I could charge millions of dollars for this and still not get paid. Instead, I do it for free. One last thing, speaking of another way to delight, amaze, and perhaps even annoy you, is the Mysterious Goings On Alexa skill. If you have one of those little spies in your house listening to your every word, burp, fart, whatever, it's right there for you to listen, and we've got the Mysterious Goings On skill. How's that work? Simple. If you have an Alexa, you say, hey Alexa, what's the news, or what's going on? Whatever you say to get your flash briefing, your updates. Me, I get NPR, I get the weather, and I get Mysterious Goings On. All it is about a 1 to 2 minute blurb of stuff you generally can't get from me on this feed, and I give it to you there. I might preview what's going on the podcast. I might give you some trivia. I might have some news you can use, something like that. So if you're interested in that, you can get that in your flash briefing. The Alexa skill, again, just Google Alexa skill Mysterious Goings On, or of course you can look in the handy dandy show notes, which you'll find here where you got the pod, or on mgopod.com. Okay. Enough of the blather. We got to get on to a person of note who uses notes in a way to enhance his creativity. Again, we're focusing on creativity in all walks of life this season, and I am thrilled to have with me one of the smartest guys I know. He's going to get the big head by the time he's done with this interview. It's one of the smartest guys I know about public policy, and that's why he's a public policy consultant. He is a former congressional aide. He is a former aide to a mayor of a very large city. He's also had numerous jobs that we can talk about here, but what he does now is he is a public policy consultant, and he has a very interesting and creative way to perhaps relax, or maybe it is to fire himself up, or maybe it's all those things, and we're going to find out as we talk to Jamie Green.
Hey, Alex, how are you?
It's good, man. Thanks for sitting through the whole housekeeping bit, man. I really appreciate it.
I felt like I had some homework, like I had some items to take, right? You know, I've got to look up I got to get your Alexa fired up, and then I also have to apparently look at your new website. You're a busy man.
I try to keep it real, and I've still got another book coming out in Halloween, so it's a good thing. Well, idle hands are the devil's workshop, as my grandmother would have said.
Right.
So, but one last thing about the Alexa skill too is that I've only been doing it once a week. So if you're a daily listener to the flash briefing, you're gonna be like, oh God, I've heard this thing all day, every day this week. What I'm trying to do is get up to speed on doing it 5 days a week, and that way it won't be annoying. We'll just see about that. But Jamie.
Yes, sir.
My goodness, you were a public policy expert. And why don't we just kind of hit the ground running and just tell us in your own inimitable fashion, what is a public policy expert?
Basically, what I do is work with either businesses or nonprofits to interface with government officials, whether that's on the local, state, or national level. So I have clients that I work with that we talk about issues that are important to them, and how do we then be able to collaborate with elected officials to try to get some things done. So that's the very short one. I mean, the dirty word, of course, Alex, is lobbyist. But I feel if you have nice clients that do good, important work, I don't think lobbyist has to be a dirty word. So that's basically what I do. And I also do a lot of public policy research and analysis. So that's the background on the side that's about doing, looking at issues and taking a hard look and benchmarking reports and that kind of stuff too. So I do both stuff on both sides.
Yeah, and so I mentioned earlier that you kind of started, I think, as interning with a congressperson, did you not?
Yes.
Years ago. Who was this?
This was a congressman out in Arizona, Ed Pastor, who was one of the nicest, kindest people I've ever met. He was so dedicated to his job. Congress gets a bad rap, and a lot of it's deserved. Mm-hmm. I won't, put a candy coating on it, but he was so dedicated. He actually would fly home every weekend from D.C. to Phoenix to be able to interact with his constituents. And, some of those guys get so checked out and they get a house out in DC, and they really don't even live where they say they're representing. But he was not that way. He was a really good guy, kind soul. And kind of a funny thing, when I was there, I had the worst time recognizing his voice. So I would answer the phones. This was a million years ago. And he would call and he'd ask for the chief of staff. And I would, because we'd been instructed to ask, who can I say who's calling? And he would always say very nicely, but this is Ed, as opposed to this is the congressman, idiot. Why can't you recognize my voice? So he was a good guy. He put up with a lot. So,
well, then that led to you being a fellow with the city of Kansas City. You worked with the mayor, the city manager's office, public works director's office of management and budget. You did those things. You kind of made your bones with them and learned some stuff there. And you did some other interesting things, but then it kind of led to you being director of government relations for the Greater Kansas City Chamber.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that was a good little tour of duty you did there. You did that about 4.5 years, right?
Yeah, actually, it is the reason why I'm able to do what I do today, because the greatest thing about working for the chamber is that you get to work with all facets of the business community. So it's not just engineering firms. It's it's nonprofits. It's Sprint, it's Hallmark, it's all those folks, the big players, but it's also some of the small businesses too. And that was such a great thing. I learned so much from so many folks, because usually if you get it into something, then you're just, if you work with engineering people, that's all you work with. The chamber, we would work with everybody in the business community. So it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot about transportation and the environment and all kinds of things. And I was also a liaison with the city of Kansas City then. So that was during the Mark Funkhauser administration, which...
Wow.
Yeah, if this guy earned my pay.
But just briefly, if you don't know, if you're not from Kansas City, Funkhauser was one of only two in the history of the city, I believe, to have never won re-election. He was a challenge. He was different. But let me ask you a question about chambers of commerce. Now, I used to be an old politician in a small way, and I was I was on the side of the aisle that the chamber generally didn't like and didn't support. Is that the case, though? You worked there, and I know you've got clients on both sides of the aisle, and I happen to know a little bit about your personal politics. So I wanted to ask you, is the chamber as monolithic as one might believe? Is it really all right-wing?
It's really interesting. So the U.S. Chamber, absolutely. The U.S. Chamber is a very conservative group. They always have been, and they probably always, and even a lot of state chambers are. But it's really, a lot of the city chambers are not. I would describe the Kansas City Chamber as being moderate to, I would even say, progressive in a lot of ways. And I think that takes a lot of people by surprise. They're expecting, they read all the stories about the U.S. Chamber, and hear all the awful things about business stuff. And then you have, the Greater Kansas City Chamber, for instance. We actually started a climate protection partnership to work on greenhouse gas emissions back in 2007. So that's a great example of how a local chamber could be very, very different from a national chamber or the state chambers on, in this case, the Kansas chamber and the Missouri chamber. It's pretty interesting, actually.
Is there something that the average Joe who doesn't own a business or isn't real involved in this stuff should know about chambers of commerce and a way it can benefit them?
I think the biggest benefit that you can get from a chamber of commerce, it's kind of what you put into it, Alex, kind of like what they told you about college. Mm-hmm. If you're a smaller business and you want to join the chamber, it works for you well if you get on committees and you go to, they have various events and they have coffees and they have after business events, and use it as a networking tool to be able to bring in new clients, and also just to get yourself out there and be exposed to things that you may not be aware of. I think that's, I always saw folks that were really engaged, that they could get a lot out of it. But it just depends on what your interests are and how you want to go forward and stuff. But it could be really helpful. And then they do some stuff where you can get, and this is probably too much into the weeds, but some of the purchasing thing that you can get group purchasing power by being a member of a chamber.
Sure, yeah. My firm, we've been a member off and on of different various chambers, and it's something we kind of stepped out of, but I'm thinking of getting back into as I announce some changes in my business, but that's for another day. We'll talk about that. So this kind of leads you into your own consulting firm, Greenhouse Consulting, and that's, What was that? That's about 9 years ago, something like that? Yeah,
it would have been April of 2011. That's when I went out on my own.
Okay. And so, what does that all involve? How does that work? What are you doing?
My wife asks me that sometimes. I have some clients that I've had from the very beginning. The biggest one is the Natural Resources Defense Council, or the NRDC,
wow.
the nonprofit environmental group. So, for instance, for them, we work on energy and sustainability issues here in Kansas City and the greater Kansas City area. So there are several ordinances and resolutions that we've worked on. The most recent one, and the one I'm very proud of, is that working with the council, we actually got the city to commit by next year to have 100% carbon-free electricity, which is pretty amazing. So all the city is actually Kansas City Power and Light's biggest customer. So by sometime next year, 100% of all the electricity that they're buying from Kansas City Power and Light will be carbon-free.
How come this is not like all over the news?
I have no idea. That's a really good question. Because when I testified in favor of it, and to the credit the council, that was a 13-0 vote, wow. Which is great when you can kind of get that kind of consensus. I said at the time, this is a really big deal. And a lot of cities have made these kind of nebulous promises like, oh, we're going to be carbon free in 2040 or way down the line where they won't be in office anymore. So it's easy to make those kind of promises. Mm-hmm. But to have something this quickly and this tangible is pretty amazing. It's a credit to the city leadership, the former mayor and the city manager and the city council. And actually, it's a credit to Kansas City Power and Light, too, that they were a good partner on this. So those are the kind of things that make me so I can sleep at night, Alex. Those are kind of wins that I like.
Well, and I know that about you. We've been buddies for a few years now. I should tell everybody, we met we are at the same gym. We were both in the same kickboxing gym. And I think it sounds weird to say we saw each other across a crowded gym, but I think the reason we did was because we were both the oldest dudes in there periodically.
Yeah, we're the sad old guys that are,
right. And I think one time you were a Husker, so you're a Nebraska Cornhusker. You were an alum of University of Nebraska, and I'm an OU alum. And I think we just started talking that first, and then it just became, and when we realized we were very close to the same age, like within a few weeks, and you jokingly said, "Hey, it's me, your evil twin," and I'm like, "No, wait, I'm the evil twin." And it's like, well, maybe one of us should grow a Spock beard and be the evil twin. But anyway, we became, and we bonded over things like football and policy and gym and running. You're an avid runner. We also bonded over Deadwood, which we were supposed to do a Deadwood podcast. Both of us got so busy, we just didn't get it done. But you know what, buddy? I want to say as a side here, there is no reason in the world we cannot go back and revisit Deadwood and do a few shows or a limited series or something about it. We should think about this, seriously. Okay, so you're doing all this very heady, necessary work, which I applaud you for, by the way. And I'm very proud to be your friend, and I'm very proud to support whatever it is you're doing. Well, I am. And but I also think, gosh, this guy, he's carrying around all this stuff, and it's research and it's analytics, and to the average person who doesn't do this kind of thing, they're probably thinking, geez, man, how does that guy like that relax? And so I think I've got the secret, but maybe it's not how you relax, but we're going to find out. You also you're the lead guitarist for a band.
Correct. Kind of crazy, isn't it? Or as my sons call it, my dad band.
Your dad band. But the difference between a lot of dad bands and yours is that yours is damn good. It's called Thunder Jacket, and you are a 90% 90s cover band, right?
That's right, man. The 90s were a great decade of music. And, it's funny, but this will blow your mind. In about 4 months, the beginning of the 90s was 30 years ago.
Stop it.
Yep.
I can't even. No,
I know.
I can't do this.
It's crazy.
I'm turning off the show. I'm walking away. Are you serious?
Think about it. It's going to be 2020. Do the math.
Oh my God. You know what's great about Thunder Jacket, guys? It's 4 of you. You got Matt Furman on vocals.
Yep. He's great.
Gosh, he's got range too.
Yeah, he does. He's got a great voice.
Dan Jackson on the drums.
Yep.
And my favorite, Stephanie Shelton on bass. She's fantastic.
Yeah. She's great. They're all great. We're really different people. One of the greatest thing about being in the band at our age is that there's no egos anymore, because none of us has any expectation that we're going to be famous, or we're not fighting over trying to, does that girl think I'm cute or you're cute? Like, you know what I mean? It's just simply about having a good time and enjoying the music. And that's the.
Yeah. But admit it, you probably arguably have the best hair in the group. So
yeah, that's a fact. I mean, there's no way you could even. There's nobody even close.
I just don't know how a guy who's basically my age has a mop of hair that thick, but it's good hair, man. It's good lead guitarist hair, man.
That's right.
So, how did this? Okay, give us a little background on this. So here you are. It's by day public policy analyst, and you're a dad. You got a couple of sons, right? And your wife's a professional, and you got all that going on, and then you're running a band. And I mean, as far as I can tell, you're gigging a lot.
Yeah, we've gotten popular lately. The time of year is good too. So it's people like, September and October in Kansas City, it's the nicest weather we have, and I think that's part of it. But yeah, we gig. It's word of mouth now. So you want to know how all this craziness started?
I do. Yeah.
So I did way back up, but I'll try to be brief. So my father was a great musician and actually was a professor at the University of Nebraska, and he gigged his entire life until he had heart attacks. He played every weekend when I was a kid. And so the musical bug was always something that was in me, and I actually did the garage band and the stuff in college and played parties and that, and that was great, and I had a great time. And then you graduate and you go and you eventually get married and stuff. So it kind of got put to the side. I never stopped playing. I just didn't play all the time. The way this started was my wife's cousin is a professional jazz singer. And she this would have been 4 years ago. We were talking and I said something about she should do a jazz show here because she's out in Los Angeles. And she said, I've always wanted to do a rock and roll show. And I said, well, rock and roll. You want to do a rock and roll show? I'm your guy, because that's what I do. And so we did a couple shows with her, and it was great. But she lives out in LA, and that kind of is what put the fire under me. There's nothing like playing live music. I don't even know how to describe it. It's an adrenaline thing, but it's not an overwhelming adrenaline. It's almost like a Zen thing. It's just this ability to create music and see people's reaction and be able to work with 3 other people who are very different and diverse, but be able to put something together at the same time. It's a great feeling. It's just hard to explain. It's nice. So that's kind of what got back. And my kids are older now. Mm-hmm. So, I couldn't have done this 10 years ago. When kids were, they're young, they're very. But now, heck, they're teenagers. They don't want to be around me anyway, so it's all good.
You got your friends now. You got your own friends, and it's interesting that you say about that, because I've been to a few shows and I've watched the power that great music played well has over people. People just if they're not full blown just out there, slam dancing in front of you as best they can, on the floor, they're at least just there. You can watch them sing along from their seats or wherever they are, and it's got to be just an incredible feeling to see that, but also to just play the music that moves you the most is got to be also a very heady thing.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and it's actually funny. We played 2 shows last week, and a great example of that is Hanson. We do Bop, the 90s. Yes. And people, it's funny, the girls or women, depending on their age, they immediately are thrilled we're playing this song. But I tell you, as the song goes on, you watch guys, and guys will get into it. They'll fight themselves. But because whatever your feeling is about it, that's a great song. I mean, that's a great pop song. And those guys are actually, and I know they're from your home state, they're very talented and their harmonies are spot on stuff. But that's a great example where like you just watch the crowd. Because at first they're like, they can tell they know the song, but they don't. And then when we kick into it, oh my God, it's fun. It's fun to watch people's reactions.
Jamie, there's something about you that I wanted to mention that I probably never said to you before is like, I have certain musical tastes and artists I like that some people just kind of cringe and go, oh, he's pretentious, like Sting or something. Like the first time I mentioned Sting, I was like waiting. I was bracing myself for you to go, oh, he's a pretentious asshole or whatever. And no, you're like, yeah, man, to be able to be a lead singer and play bass, at varying tempos and things like that. And he did some good work here. I'm not saying you thought he was the greatest thing ever, but you've done that on several artists who I expected you to, if not diss, maybe shrug and go, eh. You seem to find something really great about just about every artist. So when you talk about Hanson, it's like, yeah, I mean, that would not be something I would buy, but I've got to admit, I've heard you play it, and it kind of moved me a little bit. So because it was fun.
It's a fun, well-crafted pop song.
Yeah, I'm going to take an aside here because I'm going to put you on the spot. I have, in my opinion, this could be fun or this could be embarrassing for me. I don't know. I have, in my opinion, what I think is the greatest pop song of the past 50 years. And it's like this is like the thing you would put on Twitter and go, greatest pop song of the past 50 years is blank. Fight me, #fight me.
Right. But don't at me. Do you do that too?
But don't. I've never said. I think I've only said don't at me once, and it didn't matter. Nobody ats me much anyway. But so I'm going to throw this at you. Do you want to hear mine, or do you want to? Can you give me yours first? Okay, here we go.
No, go ahead.
Here we go. And remember, what I'm saying is the greatest, most well-crafted pop song of the past 50 years. Does not mean that the rest of the album was any good. Doesn't mean they were the biggest artist ever. But for my money, here it goes. The greatest pop song of the past 50 years is True by Spandau Ballet.
That's a great tune, man.
I expected you to be like, yeah, man, it's all right.
Well, you know what a lot of things suck about getting older, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the nicest things about getting older is you can listen to anybody and say, you know what? I don't care what you think. I like it. So that's to you. I mean, I always liked Hall & Oates.
Yeah, me too.
But there was always this pushback from the cool kids that, Hall & Oates and stuff like that. And it's like, no, they were great. They're great musicians and they wrote great songs and stuff. And they're still doing it. I just saw them last year and sold out at Sprint Center. So
right. I saw them the couple of years before they were here before. And they were, dude, that was the first album I ever got was Private Eyes by Hall & Oates.
Yeah.
And the second album, but the first album I bought for myself that I was truly in love with was Synchronicity by The Police.
No, that's one of the best albums of the 80s.
There you go. Me. Therefore of all time, in my opinion. Of course, Police is my favorite band. You know that. And that's the bummer, too, is the Police weren't around in the 90s, so you don't do any Police.
No.
I'd love to hear you guys do Police.
You got to blame that on the three boys. You can't blame that on me. I don't think anybody thought that the Police should break up when they did. Because
they went out on top. Much. They went out on top, right?
They did, but they had some. I mean, and you can see how creative they still are individually. Yeah. Like there was a lot more, but you know what? It is what it is.
Well, Andy Summers has got his Police cover band called The Police. Have you seen that?
No, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's look for it on Instagram, folks. Andy Summers, and he's just having a blast because he's 70-something years old and he doesn't give a
care.
Shit. He's like, I'm rich, I'm fun, I'm gonna have a good. And they're playing Sting's music. He's got a couple of guys. I think they're both South American that fill out the rest of the roles of the Police, and they just
good for him.
Yeah, that's what I say, man. He's living the dream. Okay, so what about you? Is there a single great pop song? It's not Bop. Come on, it's got to be.
No, Bop's like cotton candy, right? I mean, it's nice, and then it dissolves fairly quickly in your palate. I don't know. That's a really tough question. I love so many songs. I mean, you could go. We just saw Paul McCartney in concert.
Oh, geez. In
June, and it's like that guy. I mean, how many great pop songs has that guy written? And then just to try, I can't narrow it down. You'd have to let me chew on it. And if we do a Deadwood podcast, I'll give you my top 10. But
I like it. Well,
just along with that, I mean, he alone, I could name 20 great pop songs.
Okay, well, I guess the point I knew you would do that because I know you got this encyclopedic knowledge of it all. But it's just like I'll just put it to you this way, and it's so funny because I listen to McCartney, of course, and the other day, "Live and Let Die" came on, and if you're driving and "Live and Let Die" comes on and you're not speeding up by about 20 miles per hour, I don't know what's wrong with you. No, but whenever True comes on, I could listen to it over and over. Now, my favorite song of all time is virtually nobody's, I don't think. Well, maybe not, but is Distant Sun by Crowded House, which I've heard that
That's a
song.
great tune too.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
Oh man, I joke with my wife and kid. I'm like, that's gonna be played at my funeral, and I've actually said, and if Jamie's still knocking around, ask him to play it.
Okay.
Yeah, man. So you might want to bone up on that if you hear me coughing. Let's get back to you though. So Thunder Jacket, you're playing. You've played some gigs out of state. You've been up in Nebraska again, right? Where have you guys gone?
Well, we played Lincoln, Nebraska because so Matt, the singer that you talked about, he's actually a native Nebraskan as well, and we both went to the University of Nebraska. So we had enough family and friends up in Lincoln that we knew if we came into the show that we'd have a ton of people there. And so it was a one-off. We have Stephanie and Dan are very kind, and they gave up a weekend for us to go up there and play. But we play a ton. Right now we're playing a ton. Taps on Main, which is right on Main Street and 20th Street. That's where we have a bunch of gigs. We're actually playing out in Martin City. I play Kobe's in Bonner Springs. It just kind of depends. Right. And then we do private parties, which are a lot of fun. And that's where the money is.
That's where the money. Yeah, I think you told me that. And by the way, folks, if you're in the Kansas City area and you want to go see them, go to kcthunderjacket.com. The link will be on the show notes and on mgopod.com. But you can see the complete schedule, and you can learn a little bit more about Matt and Stephanie and Dan and who's this guy we're talking to? Jamie. Yeah, that's right. It's Dan, right? Yes.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, okay.
Dan is an energy trader by day, drummer extraordinaire by night. He actually was my younger son's Cub Scout master. That's how we met.
Oh, so, my gosh.
Probably the most uncool rock and roll story ever, but it's the truth.
Yeah. And so do Matt and Stephanie have, I don't want to get too deep into their personal lives, but do they have different kind of gigs than you would expect, or are they...
Stephanie's an artist. She actually went to Kansas City Art Institute. She's really talented, and she and her husband flip houses. And then Matt was a special ed teacher forever, I think, right out of college, and in the Platte County School District. I forgot which school. And he actually, I just hate him for this. He's actually retired.
Get out of here.
53, almost 54 years old, and he does not have a day job.
He did his time, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for him.
So you guys. So Thunder Jacket is his day job now. Haha. That's fantastic. And you guys have got. You guys also, by the way, folks, when you go to Thunder Jacket, you can get to their Facebook, Twitter, Insta, and all that, and their YouTube channel and all that stuff. So let's talk a little bit though about how Thunder Jacket and just your music in general, because you said you talked to me a little bit, and we can talk more towards in a little bit about Laura, about your wife's cousin who's a jazz singer, and your work with her. But how does all this mesh with you in doing your day job? How does the music, I don't want to be cliche and say it keeps me sane or something like that, but if that's the case, go ahead. But how does the music mesh with balancing out your professional and personal life?
It's the greatest stress reliever. It's just a tonic. It is a cliche, but it's true. I can have the worst, most stressful day, on the public policy side. I go downstairs, I plug in my guitar and start playing, and honest to God, the world just melts away. It's just, you are so in the moment. It's such a great thing, because I do some meditation, some of that too. And that's the thing that we're always trying to do, right? We're not trying to live in the past, and we're not trying to be stressed about the future. You're trying to be in the moment, and playing music is one of the greatest ways to be in the moment. It's just a gift. It really is. It's such a great thing to be able to do. I'm really lucky.
What's your spouse think of it?
She loves it. She's such a good egg. She's such a nice, she loves to dance anyway.
And she does.
Yeah. And she loves music. And, my joke with her is that it's cheaper than a Tesla and safer than a motorcycle for a midlife crisis. So, but she's great. She goes to way too many shows. She said, what a nice spouse. She probably goes to 3/4 of the shows and has a good time, but she loves it. Now my kids, that's a different story, but I thought my dad was the uncoolest person on the planet when I was their age.
Sure.
It's funny how your perspective changes.
Right. It's funny. I was at a show, and your wife was dancing, and your younger son was like, "No, Mom, stop dancing."
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to say to him, "Dude, your mom dances really well. She's not embarrassing you at all." But he just, it's a disconnect. You don't want to see your mom or your dad being that way, And my kid does that to me a little bit too. She's like, "Okay, slow down there, old man." And it's fine. It's fine. I think these are going to be wonderful, wonderful memories for your kids later on, when they look back. And just like you speak so fondly of your father, and of course your mom's still in Nebraska.
Yep.
She is a Facebook friend of mine, and she's a hoot. Just love her.
She was just here, 87 years old. She just drove down 200 miles each way 2 weeks ago.
Oh my goodness,
she is great.
She's great. So, is there ever a time when the music is not a tonic? Is there ever a time when it's like hanging over you? Like, what if you're so busy you don't get to practice for a week? What's that do to you?
I mean, it can be that way because, part of it, there's pride involved with playing out. Like, you don't want to suck.
Right.
You want to have it be professional. And I've seen bands that aren't, and you're like, you feel bad for them.
Yeah.
But there's been, honest to God, it's probably how I feel about running too. There's been a few times where I'm like, we have rehearsal tonight and I'm tired and I don't want to do this right now. And then it's just something about once you get into it, you love it. It's great. So I have never, I've been playing guitar since, I don't know, 1980 something, and I've never regretted picking up a guitar. I mean, that's the honest to God truth. I always love it. And I probably drive people nuts, because I put down the guitar and watch the TV show with me, but it's just something that I really enjoy.
Do you play anything else? Any other instruments?
A little piano. I actually took piano lessons first. Yeah, piano. I took some piano lessons when I was a kid.
Right.
But I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan, and that's what changed my world.
Oh, yeah.
He's the reason why I picked up the guitar. I saw him, and I like piano fine, and I certainly still like Billy Joel and Elton John and that kind of stuff. But I loved his music anyway, and we saw him live, and it was a transformative experience to see somebody play an instrument like that and the emotion that he could evoke and the soul of it. I was just blown away, and I was like, I want to do that. And I will never be able to do it like he did, but it's such a great gift. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, sweet dreams and flying machines, right? That unfortunately take our heroes from us way too soon. Let me ask you about a few heroes we've lost and get your take. I love talking to musicians about some of my heroes, if that's all right.
Sure.
Real quick. So we lost in short order. We lost Prince.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Prince?
The term genius gets bandied about way too much.
Mm-hmm.
He's an offensive genius on football, or he's a, whatever, public, not me, but that guy's a public policy genius. And it's not true. They're just good at what they do. Prince was legitimately a genius. Yeah. And that's not something I would say often, hardly at all. But the amount of stuff he put out, how great so much of it was, his ability to craft tunes that were not only something that you and I would enjoy just on the surface, but some of the stuff that, just how deep it was, all of it. It's just amazing how talented he was, how great of a songwriter he was. He was great just at how good of a musician he was. Yes. I don't know. There's a YouTube clip out there where he's doing a sound check, and I think he's in Japan or something. And he's on the keyboard, and they're just, testing mic level stuff. And he just starts playing Summertime, the Gershwin song.
Sure, yeah.
And he's just, he could have been a jazz pianist right there. And he's like, he tells the band, okay, here are the key changes and stuff. And it's just that he was a phenomenal drummer. It's just unbelievable. So yeah, Prince was the real deal.
Yeah, I there's a video I direct everybody to look for too, is when he joined the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think, tribute to George Harrison, and they played "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," and it's amazing to think you can forget 20 other incredible legendary musicians, but that you can when you're watching Prince. And at the very end, he just, without a thought, without a look, just throws his guitar in the air and lets his dude downstairs catch it, and he walks off.
Oh yeah, he was a showman. God. And there was he had a lot of ego. That's all very true. If you go to Paisley Park, Prince had a lot of pictures of Prince up on the wall, including a mural that's probably, 20 feet wide. But if you like Prince, you have to go to Paisley Park.
Yeah, I got to make the pilgrimage. Yeah, and one last thing too is you listen to his Madhouse recordings at all?
I haven't that much. I need to.
I love, oh my God, one of my favorites. It's mostly instrumental stuff, and it's just fantastic. I commend everyone to look at that. Other person we lost who, in my opinion, is a genius. You might not necessarily agree, but I'll find out. David Bowie.
I love Bowie. I don't know if genius, whatever. Everybody has their own opinion.
Sure.
I love Bowie because he was able to reinvent himself so much.
Oh my God, yes.
And I love Bowie because he always took chances. Yeah. He didn't always do the safe thing. And of course,
Tin Machine.
Oh yeah. And the biggest reason I love David Bowie is he put Stevie Ray Vaughan on Let's Dance, and that's what made Stevie Ray Vaughan become, a worldwide star. So that he's going to get kudos in my book.
I think people forget that, and it wasn't. Was it Omar Hakim on the drums on that one? I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Who played with Sting when Sting left the Police first, and then I love that. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and I totally respect your opinion on that too. I think maybe my belief in Bowie's genius would have to be in just the whole package, the reinvention, but yeah, there was some musically. He had some valleys for sure. And
it's hard. I don't think people understand that because people are always like, "Why don't you do an original band?" Right? And it's like, man, writing original music that's good. That's really difficult. I mean, there's a ton of people that write original music, and most of it's forgettable and not. I mean, so Bowie wrote a ton of great songs. I'm not trying to discount him at all. I mean, if I tell every single person you bring up that they're a genius, then they'll be, oh, well, he's one of those people. Well, if I think he's pretty talented.
Well, if everybody's a genius, no one is. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like when I say about the word awesome. I say that's my saying on that. I'm like, well, if everything is awesome, then nothing is, because people overuse that word. So I totally agree. No, I totally agree. Like I love Sting. I don't think Sting's a genius. I think he is up there, button up against that, but he's not. And so I totally have some perspective on that. And of course, death, particularly untimely death, has a way of changing people's opinions about artists, I think.
I wish people would embrace musicians more when they are alive.
Yeah.
I always see this outpouring when, we just lost Aretha Franklin too, not that long ago. And it's like people, then they'll start tweeting about her and talking about, it's like, well, support Aretha when she was around more. Yeah. That's kind of my thought.
Yeah, by the way, I heard she had like $1 million in uncashed checks lying around her house.
That wouldn't surprise me at all.
My God. That's so funny. No, I totally agree. And I believe that about live music too. And it's like, folks, it's so easy. We talked about this with Scott, one of my previous guests, who was an actor in community theater. He just won a regional theater award for best actor, and his show came in second, all that. And people can roll their eyes at community theater and go, "Oh God, I don't want to see old man Mr. Smith from do his umpteenth version of Ebenezer Scrooge, whatever." But they can say the same thing about going to a cover band performance at a bar or something. I mean, right? You know this, right? But you know what you're missing out on, folks? You're missing out on some quality musicianship from people who you can walk right up to after their set and congratulate, who will be generally happy to talk to you, especially if you buy them a beer or something. Is that about right? Or
no, absolutely. I mean, we do it for ourselves, sure, but it's the audience interaction that makes it worthwhile. I mean, that's what makes it special. And it's the same, I'm sure, with your theater friend. I mean, it's seeing the audience there and the reaction. Yeah. And it's creating something unique that it's only in a certain time and space that you can't, you can try to duplicate it, but it's never going to be exactly the same.
And that's one thing. I mean, I was telling Scott that I miss acting a little bit. I mean, I acted from the time I was 12 until I was in my 30s, and I'm out of it now. And it's a muscle that it's probably atrophied and gone with me. And I just don't have the time. And I devote my creative energies to writing books and stories and podcasts and things like that. But so I totally get it and I respect it. And I'm hugely envious of you. I think I've told you this. I don't have real musical ability, and I always wished I had. I tried to learn guitar, but I'm just not very dexterous and not very good. But that's not the point. The good news is I have a buddy like you who plays really well, and I can go see you, and I can just you could be my guitar hero. That'll work for me. So, so Jamie, let me ask you before we roll, because you got some projects coming up besides Thunder Jacket. Do you have something coming up?
Laura Ellis is the name of my wife's cousin, and she is a great jazz singer. She has, if you have either Spotify or Apple Music, she's put out several. And she and I are actually, this is when the internet's cool. We're actually working on putting together kind of a Christmas EP, where she's singing Christmas songs and I'm playing guitar on it. And we shoot it back and forth up on Dropbox, and record tracks. And, the recording software stuff has gotten so good that you can do a lot of it at home, which is really cool. So that's something I'm doing with her, and always enjoy collaborating with her. She's a phenomenal talent. I get goosebumps hearing her sing.
Well, I've heard her. I think I heard her do. Well, I first saw her when she was playing with Thunder Jacket. She was singing with you guys a little bit.
Yep.
And but you've also turned me on to a lot of her stuff too. Now, if it's okay, I'll put a link in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Is she vintagevoicemusic.com, or is she something
Yeah, that's
else?
her.
Okay. And we'll put folks, you got to check it out. Laura's really great, and obviously likes to have fun too, playing with Thunder Jacket and all that. And so, Jamie Green, you are the guy who helps craft policies that affect our lives in very beneficial ways, but you're also a guy who can help us relax at the end of a long day worrying about the shit show in DC or whatever. So,
oh my God, we all need to relax so much.
We really do. Hey, tell you what, I'm gonna take you up on this idea that maybe we come back and revisit Deadwood. Maybe we just do. How about this? Think about this. We'll do an episode for each season, and then do an episode on the movie and a tie-up. Maybe we just do a little mini series of them. That could be fun to do. That way, it's not too big of a bite, and you don't have to worry too much because it's just like committing to a week of shows, right? I mean, it's a lot of work. So.
No, I get it, but now I'm always happy to talk about Deadwood, as you know. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the last thing I want to ask you, and then we'll let you go. So everybody, I've got the links in the show notes for Thunderjacket and all that. But is there one thing or one myth about musicians, or one myth about cover bands or whatever that we haven't covered here that you want people to know, or just something you want people to know? You've already said so many great points, but is there one last thing you have?
Well, I think a lot, and this is if anybody exceeds in anything, whether you're Ted Williams batting, or we just talked about Prince and some other folks. Yes, there's natural ability, but 90% of it is people put in the work and the hours. So the one thing that kind of ticks me off sometimes is where people expect musicians to come in and play for free, as if it's just an hour of your time and stuff. And what you're paying a musician for is the hours and hours and years of them practicing and rehearsing. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a very long process. I don't care if you're Eddie Van Halen or Stevie Ray Vaughan or me or whoever. When you first pick up an instrument, you're terrible at it.
Right.
So it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to begin. And I think that's the thing. There's this myth that they're just people prodigies, and there's occasionally some of that, but even